So looking at the familiar spot syndrome, we need to really consider the signs of the familiar spot syndrome. What are the signs of the familiar spot syndrome? What are the signs in your life of the familiar spot syndrome? The familiar spot syndrome makes people attached to their bondage. The familiar spot syndrome makes people attached to their bondage and makes their bondage attractive to them. Sometimes you see a person who is in a bondage, and in your mind you think you can pull that person out of their bondage, but unknown to you they have become attracted. The bondage has become attractive to them. They don't want deliverance. I'm sure you'll meet a whole lot of people who don't want deliverance from the ordeal of their life. Why? They become so yoked and used to their bondage. So how do you know you are under this familiar spot syndrome? It's when you become attached to your bondage and your bondage becomes attractive to you. How attractive is your bondage to you? The second sign of the familiar spot syndrome is when you don't want to hear the truth because you don't want the responsibility of making a change. What is the second sign of the familiar spot syndrome? When you don't want to hear the truth. You don't want to hear the truth. You want to avoid the responsibility of change, because change comes with a responsibility. So you don't want to hear the truth because you don't want the responsibility that goes along with change. The third sign that you may be under the familiar spot syndrome is when, instead of seeking Jehovah to fix a problem, the familiar spot syndrome make you seek familiar places. People who are under the familiar spot syndrome do not seek God for deliverance. They seek familiar places. We know people who, instead of seeking God, they run down to the beer parlor. They run down to that wrong association that supports and keeps them bound to that yoke. Association, wrong association. Addiction. Instead of seeking Jehovah to fix a problem, you run down to your addiction. Heroin, drug addiction, lust, sexual immorality, gluttony. What do you run to fix a problem instead of running to Jehovah? When you face a problem in life, you are supposed to run to Jehovah, but many times people run to people. They run to people because they are familiar with those people. The familiar spot syndrome will make you seek familiar places rather than seek Jehovah for a solution. It's an ingrained mindset and belief disorder. It's a belief disorder. You may not know you have it, but these are the symptoms in your life when you observe that instead of seeking Jehovah to fix a problem, you run to familiar places, you run to a drug, you run to your medication, you run to people, you run to a friend, you run to addiction, you run to lust, you run to emotional craving, you run to your lustful drunk, you run to drunkenness, you run to an idol, you run to things, and the things you run to pull you away from Jehovah. And the last sign of the familiar spot syndrome is this: when you've stayed so long in a place, you don't want to try new things. When people are held bound by the familiar spot syndrome, they get tied to a place. They get tied to old systems. They get tied to old beliefs. They get tied to old tradition. They get tied to old ways of doing things. They get tied to old friends. They get tied to old places. They don't work.